I don't understand why Law & Order, Organized Crime will be left out of the newest Law & Order franchise crossover. This sequel series to Law & Order, SVU is grittier and more violent than other shows in the franchise, but it still has several connections to the other Law & Order shows and the broader One Chicago universe. Additionally, Stabler's Christopher Maloney status as lead detective in this series makes Law & Order, Organized Crime the best series to continue Law & Order, SVU's Elliot Stabler and Olivia Benson romance. For its first 4 seasons, Law & Order, Organized Crime aired on NBC as part of a 3-hour block of Law & Order shows. However, the network decided that Law & Order, Organized Crime Season 5 will stream exclusively on Peacock. NBC recently amended its decision, announcing that the season premiere will air on NBC on April 17, 2025, before the series moves to streaming-only status. Surprisingly, the other 2 Law & Order shows will have a crossover episode that night, but Law & Order, Organized Crime season premiere will not be part of it. Law & Order and SVU crossover event airs the same night Organized Crime Season 5 premieres. Law & Order, Organized Crime's second episode will drop on Peacock the same night. Mariska Hargitay as Benson looking confused in Law & Order SVU next to Christopher Maloney as Stabler looking serious in Law & Order Organized Crime. Law & Order and Law & Order, SVU will have its second crossover of the season on April 17, 2025. I'm excited about this crossover because it will allow Ada's Carisi, Peter Scanavino, and Price, Hugh Dancy, to work together on a brutal murder case. Carisi has had some challenges with his mental health this season, so it'll be fascinating to see how he interacts with someone who is not part of the somewhat exclusive Special Victims Unit. Additionally, Benson butted heads with Price during her previous crossover appearance, so I'm curious whether their conflict will be resolved in this new crossover. However, I'm disappointed that Law & Order, Organized Crime will not participate in the crossover event. Instead, the gritty procedural will air its premiere on NBC after the crossover episodes, and a second episode of Law & Order, Organized Crime Season 5 will drop on Peacock on the same day, allowing those who are interested to continue watching the story immediately after watching the premiere. All 3 episodes will air at the same night on NBC, but Organized Crime is not tied to the crossover. It will have a completely separate story. Law & Order, Organized Crime Rollins leaning over to look at evidence with Stabler. I understand the logic behind putting the first episode of Law & Order, Organized Crime on NBC. This strategy allows the procedural to gain new viewers, many of whom may be willing to follow the series onto Peacock. It is an especially sensible plan when taking into consideration that Law & Order, Organized Crime has been on hiatus for nearly a year. Thus, it is more likely to get viewers to transition to Peacock by offering a teaser episode on NBC first. However, it doesn't make sense to schedule the NBC premiere on the same day as a crossover episode but not make Law & Order, Organized Crime part of the event. This decision will lead to a non-smooth transition from the crossover to Law & Order, Organized Crime's premiere episode. Fans of the franchise are also used to turning the TV off after Law & Order, SVU, making it less likely that they will stay tuned for a standalone episode of Law & Order, Organized Crime. How NBC could have tied Organized Crime to the Law & Order crossover. Allowing Stabler a cameo appearance was just one option. NBC should have ditched this confusing plan for Law & Order, Organized Crime Season 5's release on Peacock. I've been excited for months that Law & Order, Organized Crime's second episode will include a crossover appearance from Benson. Thus, the simplest thing to do would have been to broadcast the first 2 episodes of Law & Order, Organized Crime on NBC so that the second one lined up with the crossover, thus allowing it to participate to some extent in the event. This plan would have meant that Law & Order, Organized Crime needed to double up on released episodes somewhere along the line so that it ended at the same time as the other Law & Order shows. The best way to accomplish this would have been to release the last 2 episodes at the same time instead of the first 2. If NBC and Peacock didn't want to schedule the procedural this way, the network should have given Stabler a small part in the crossover so that the 3 shows would all be connected for the night.